We're good? Okay. Good evening. Today is Wednesday, February 12th, 2025 at 6 p.m. We are in the Brecksville-Brovey Heights Education Center, 6638 Mill Road, Brecksville, Ohio. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Public participation is governed by Board Bylaw 0169.1, public participation at board meetings. This meeting will be live streamed via YouTube and will also be recorded for later viewing. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel where all recordings are posted. Item 1B, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1C, roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Spikowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. Moving on to item 2A, President's announcements. Don't really have anything other than people that are attending. Thank you for your attendance. If anybody wishes to be heard at hearing of the public, you do have to fill out a little form, and then we'll call you up when we get to that part of the agenda. Item 2B, notice of consent agenda. We've kind of tightened things up on how we do, God bless you, consent agendas. And so at this time, I'm going to ask if any board member wishes to remove any items from the consent agenda. No? Okay. We'll move on to item 3, board area of responsibilities, legislative OSBA liaison. Helen.
So last month there was a bunch of updates that I discussed, but suddenly this year the Ohio School Board Association is sending a legislative liaison information about things that have been proposed. So I'll just quickly go through these. There's not a lot, but there is a school bus safety act that's been introduced, which will appropriate $25 million to create a school bus safety grant fund. There is HB 10, which would require public school boards of education and ODEW to adopt policies prohibiting the purchase of cultivated protein food products or food misbranded as a meat or egg product. SB 7 would require all types of school districts to provide instruction to students on short-term or chronic substance use. SB 19 would require districts and schools to develop a mathematics improvement and monitoring plan for each student who qualifies. SB 34 would require public school boards to select at least one of the bills listed historical educational documents to display in every classroom. I don't know what those educational documents are. SB 44 would allow students to concurrently receive an Ed Choice Scholarship or Pilot Project Scholarship and either an Autism or John Peterson Special Needs Scholarship. The bill would, SB 47 would require disclosure of for-profit status of community school operators. SB 48 would require the state auditor to annually audit each chartered non-public school that receives public money. And SB 49 would eliminate the right of first refusal for certain schools in the acquisition of school district real property. So that's on the horizon for later this year. And that's it right now.
All right, great. Thanks for the update. Moving on, Cuyahoga Valley Career Center, Ava.
This week on Tuesday, the governor released the executive budget, which includes his proposals for education spending. The good news for CVCC is that they're in good stead, positively positioned, and Dave Mangus, the superintendent, will be continuing to apprise us as to what the situation continues to be. The CVCC student staff visited our state legislature in Columbus. The students were very well spoken and told meaningful stories to express the value of CVCC. He was very proud of the students and impressed by the passion in following their dreams. Marcy, Jackie, and Dave, they are members of the board, attended the ACTE Ohio Legislative Seminary. We heard from legislators, state leaders, business leaders about hot topics in Ohio. The budget, higher education, K through 12 education, and legal hot topics were covered. Dave moderated a bipartisan panel of legislators, 3 of which were from Northeast Ohio. And the reason that he felt a need to do this is that by taking a leadership role in the conference allowed him to advocate for CBCC and career tech in Ohio statewide. There will be a resolution on February agenda requesting approval for his attendance at the ACTE Region 1 conference in Foxborough, Massachusetts. The conference, taking place in March over spring break, will focus on the topics of program development and instructional strategies specific to our region. This conference will be hosted in Ohio in 2026, and he will be on the planning committee. And so he felt that it was incumbent upon him to be very active in this initiative. And that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to curriculum, Tish.
Yes, so not really going to dive into curriculum, so to speak, and talk about progress monitoring and give an update on that and some instructional happenings in the district. The elementary just completed their mid-year diagnostics, so progress monitoring of the students in K through 5 using the tools that that they use, which is Acadience for kindergarten and first grade and iReady for 2nd through 5th. And what our staff are doing now, our administrators, coaches, the teachers, they're really currently diving in and analyzing that data that came from those diagnostics. And this is what's important about this is what's going to drive instruction for the rest of the school year and is going to, point everyone in the right direction and in the right lane to continue to show growth and progress for our students as they move into state testing here shortly. So that's what's going on with progress monitoring. And then we are looking at introducing writing revolution to our students. What has been found is our students have pretty significant weaknesses in writing skills, specifically writing incomplete sentences and using compound sentences to express thoughts and produce writing that will eventually turn into essays and everything they need to do as they move up in the grades. And so where we're at with that is, sorry, Dr. Martin, we're starting with looking at our training coaches and administrators, and that will eventually create a systematic approach to writing as we roll it out to our students. So that this notes. So that's what's going on with curriculum.
Okay, great. Thanks for the update. Moving on to finance, Tish and myself. No updates in the finance world right now.
We're just waiting for the auditor of state.
That's
Just waiting.
that could
Just
be
waiting.
that could be a minute, yeah.
For our audit. Okay. Transportation myself, it's still all quiet on transportation. Board policy, Lisa and Ellen.
We have, oh my gosh, is it like 20 something
Mhm.
policies on the agenda tonight? I'm sorry, I don't have the exact number. And I'll just go through some of them, like a broad overview. I'll go through like the first half, and then Ellen, you're gonna go through the second half, right? Okay. So of those, the first one is just a technical corrections policy that just authorizes the superintendent to make any technical corrections to policies. So that's like things like grammar and spelling mistakes, renumbering sections, or changing names of staff members when the titles change. And then when those corrections are made, the board would get a list of the changes that have been made. The next policy is review of policy. We're rescinding that because it conflicts with the technical corrections policy. The next one is the drug-free workplace policy. That's a new policy. It just says that staff can't manufacture, possess, use, distribute, dispense drugs or alcohol on school property. The College Credit Plus program policy is being revised. It's required by Senate Bill 104. it's just moving the cutoff date for when a family can notify the district for when a student wants to participate in CCP classes. So the current cutoff date is you have to notify by April 1st for the following school year. And that still would remain in effect, but families now can also notify the district by November 1st if they want to do CCP classes in the spring semester only. So it just gives one additional deadline for spring semester classes.
Said somebody must have missed a deadline along the way, so they created legislation to solve that today.
For field trip and other district sponsored trips, this is just updating to add the requirement from Senate Bill 104. It's saying students of the opposite biological sex are prohibited from sharing overnight accommodations. And I did ask Mr. Harrison, does that also include like a brother and sister who want to share overnight accommodations? And yes, it does. So the next two are participation of community STEM school students in extracurricular activities and interscholastic activities. Those have really similar updates. They're both being updated to add the requirement for the preseason informational meeting that all student athletes have to attend with their families, and that all students get sudden cardiac arrest information. That's from House Bill 47. And then House Bill 147 says the superintendent may allow a student from another district to participate in athletics if they meet certain criteria. So it's also being updated for that. The special education policy is being updated just to say we're adopting the state's model policy on educating students with disabilities. Our interdistrict open enrollment policy is being updated to provide an exception for students whose parents are active duty military. Our assignment within district policy is being updated to coincide with current DEW provisions about how students are assigned to school buildings. It's not especially relevant here because all our students in different grade levels just go to one building, but we still have that policy. And then the release time for religious instruction during the school day policy, that's being updated based on the changes in House Bill 8. So that policy used to be optional for districts. It's no longer optional. And then we've just made some other adjustments based on the new law.
Do you want to just say what our district policy is for the release time?
Yeah, like what? So we made some updates to define what core curriculum is. We established some time limits for release time instruction. And then we have a requirement for a criminal background check for volunteers. So through the private entity. So they would do a criminal background check and they would give it to us. I got everything.
And just as a reminder, we had a release time for religious education policy on the books. Essentially, it just had to change from may to shall. A district may allow, and it had, because of new legislation, had to go to shall. So then since it is required, then there were a couple adjustments or additional items that we added into the policy, as Lisa talked about. 50 minutes is the max to be away. Why do we pick 50 minutes? That's the time of an elementary lunch and recess time, because ideally that would be the time where that type of activity would take place. Currently, we have not been approached by any organizations wanting to do this. Not saying that we won't, but at the same time, I think it goes a long way of the relationship our school district has with our faith community and understanding the importance of education and all the mandates that are put upon us and how much material and curriculum we have to cover in a given day and given school year. That sacrificing instructional time is very difficult. But we do have the availability to do it if we so choose to partner with an organization who wants to do this. So we shall see. But policy is currently in place for the first read. And just as a reminder, I'll throw it out there, then I don't have to say it twice, but this is the first read for these policies. So the executive team have gone through the policies and made certain adjustments or selections in some policies. I've met with both Lisa and Ellen and gone through those policies. I have fielded questions from other board members. So later on the first read, we could talk about some of those questions if we don't bring them up at this point in the agenda. And we have a first read and then they get officially approved at the second read, which is the next board meeting. Between those board meetings, we can make adjustments if so needed. If we would make an adjustment to the first read policies, I obviously would make the board aware of that and also the public aware of it at the next meeting of any changes from what's currently posted.
All right, and then the second half of the policies that we're considering today and then next month. And I do want to make something clear because there is an update to our board policy on use of medication. This I know that there has been a lot of commentary out there about our district policy regarding medication. This actually is not related to that. I'm not, like, we could make another change. This stems from some legislative changes from Columbus. So I just want to make that
Pertaining to over-the-counter medications.
so the board policy is just being updated to include over-the-counter medication. I think seizure medication
And
as
seizure.
well.
Mhm.
So that's, sorry, board policy 5330. Board policy 5350 is being updated. It's really beefing up policies on student well-being. It's adding mental health and some suicide prevention language to the current policy. The policy 5460 about graduation requirements, and I think they're very slight changes. We're adding a fine art requirement and adding 1 credit of fine art, 0.5 credit of financial literacy.
That's from the hospital.
Policy 5610 is essentially enlarging expulsions to 180 days from 90 days in very certain scenarios related to specifically to any endangerment of health and safety of students and staff. So it's expanding our current policy of 90 days in those situations. Board policy 5751 is being updated to add a provision that essentially pregnant students may not be discriminated against, and also providing lactation opportunities if requested. Policy 5780.01 is a brand new policy. It's about 2.5 pages long. And this is what the legislature was referring to in December as the Parent Bill of Rights. If people want to take a look at it, it's on our website, but it is doing a number of things regarding what parents are entitled to know about their students. It is requiring the school to notify parents of different things. Anyway, so that's 5780. Ironically, then the next policy update is 6151, which has to do with passing of insufficient funds.
What a change in topics there.
What a change in topics.
So if payment
That
isn't
happens.
received on an NSF check within 10 days, then the board can do something about it. And then policy 7421 then kind of backs up to what the Parent Bill of Rights was about, and includes some language about biological sex and use of bathrooms, locker rooms, shower rooms, and changing rooms. This policy is on the website if anybody wants to take a look at it. Policy 7440 is about video surveillance and electronic monitoring. We're recommending option 2, and there's a whole lot of language in there about smart sensor monitoring technology that does not apply in our district. Policy 8142, the state is now requiring the RATback system to be used for more school employees and even for independent contractors that the district uses. And then policy 8452 expands training and AED requirements. And then lastly, policy 8500 has to do with food service. And Jeff, this is essentially adding language that complies with the guidelines relating to the release time for religious
Yeah,
instruction.
in a nutshell, there were concerns raised that if students were leaving campus during lunch for religious instruction, according to federal guidelines, they could, if they were participating in the school lunch program, they could not take their school lunch with them. You're not allowed to eat it off campus, according to the school lunch program, which has been around for a very long time. So this, through legislation, which required the policy change, now does allow them to take it off campus. But then then that leads to a review of the 8,500 food service policy, which is probably one of the more lengthy policies we have. And Amy took that opportunity to just go through and make sure that it's in line with how we do business every day. And when Ellen mentions it's on the website, I just want to point out it's under board docs. You go to board docs where all of our agendas are hosted, and all of our policy is hosted. You go to tonight's agenda, and on the item on the agenda, as we get to it later in the meeting, you'll see it. Each one of these policies is a different PDF that you can open, print, do whatever you like. If you have questions about any of them, feel free. I have no problem having conversations about it. They're not overly difficult to understand, but at the same time, there are pieces and parts that we do adjust from time to time that is BBH specific. But when Neola generates policy options and suggestions for us, they're vetting it through their legal team to make sure that we're complying with legislation. So I'll have more to talk about later on the agenda.
Well, and I think it's probably better use of everybody's time to just to provide a summary.
Yep,
Instead
absolutely.
of sitting up here and reading.
No,
So just to clarify too, there is a policy page on the district website, which will link you to board docs. So you don't have to go directly to board docs. You can go to our district website and then from there, link into board docs. And that's true on the meetings also. Thanks for the policy updates. We're going to move on to BBH Schools Foundation. Tish.
So we are a week and a day away from the Schools Foundation's big fundraiser for the year. And so we're the last big push. Get your tickets. It's going to be a great night. It's a toast to our future at Michael Angelo's Winery. Heavy appetizers. I believe you get 2 glasses of wine. We have raffle. Or, I think we're going to institute a raffle, but there's also bidding going on for several awesome packages. There is a VIP pickup and drop off spot at the elementary that's going to save you a lot of time. If you bid on it and win that, that will be huge for whoever takes that home. VIP parking at the high school is always popular. There are some awesome graduation packages on there. So if you have a senior, there's an awesome package for getting rentals for a graduation party. I know Marianne Candies is doing a candy table at a graduation party that's donated. So by all means, come get your tickets, get on the website, bid. It's going to be a really great night. Starts at 6:30. And I think that is really all for that. For that is their big event.
Tish,
coming up.
do you know how many tickets they've sold so far?
They have sold just over 90, and they are looking to push that the ticket sales will be capped at 130. So, and tickets are $85 if anyone is.
And I don't
Actually,
know.
it's a
if
great
you
cause.
Said this, but even if like you can't go that night, you can still bid on
You
it.
yes.
if you
So
do that.
thank you, Lisa. Yeah, you can absolutely if you can't attend or are unable to attend, you can certainly bid through the app or through the site. 32 auctions on them.
pretty
Auctions. Yeah, it has. Did you? Yeah.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Mhm.
Moving on to safety, Ava and Lisa.
There's no
Nothing.
update.
Okay, sustainability, Ava and Ellen.
Nothing that I have. Well, this isn't really an update, but I'll just push one more time. If anybody in the community wants to compost, please join Rust Belt Riders and check off the school district as who you're contributing through. It's a great, it'll save money for the district and it's good for the environment. So those memberships, Rust Belt Rider memberships are available anytime.
Did we hit I guess we were
Yeah, I
just
think we
one
hit it.
person
I need to get
away.
an update from Amy. Well, I
Okay.
think we were 1 away a couple months ago, so
Right.
I'm sure we did it.
Okay, thank you.
I will double check.
Very good. Moving on to PSO, Lisa.
So the PSO meeting was canceled for February.
It's 2 months in a row, isn't it? It was on a snow day.
Yeah,
Maybe this is
so-
my way to avoid the. Just kidding.
So I-
Just kidding.
so I don't have an update for PSO, though I guess I would just say the elementary school had a bingo night. It was really nice to see Mr. Harrison was there and Dr. Martin was there calling bingo. And I know all the elementary school and principals were there too. So I really appreciate seeing them there. And just in general, like all our administrators, that all the events they go to and all the time they put in, I really appreciate all of you and everything that you do for our students. I really think it makes a difference. And I know, like, as a parent, I love it. And I think our kids really enjoy it, seeing you guys there. So the next PSO council meeting is March 6th. So that's the next snow day, possibly. Just mark that one down.
Just gotta keep it under 5.
Yeah.
Hopefully that would be the last snow day too.
Yeah.
if it happens. Okay, thank you. Moving on to co-curricular, extracurricular, Tish and Lisa.
No report.
The only thing I'll add here, and this is something that I know we've talked about, both Lisa and Tish. So Mark and myself and Craig, with Craig's help, we're in budget season. So there's always questions around athletics in particular, but extracurriculars, about who pays for what and what does pay to participate pay for. So I just want to let the board know that we're having these conversations of finding ways to be able to accurately and concisely answer that question, because it's not always crystal clear. But we want to find ways to communicate that information a little bit easier. So we're taking some steps through the budgeting process that I think will help. So later this spring and going into next year, we're going to even have some, maybe possibly have some infographics to help explain who pays for what. Because I know as an athletic parent, you will have your pay to participate, and then you'll have spirit packs, and then you'll have ribbons, and then you'll have cleats, and then you'll have this and that. And a lot of that is not always generated by the school district or the coach, but maybe by parents or the boosters or whatever. So we just want to kind of have it clear, because I think everybody just assumes sometimes that the district is requiring some of those things, and actually it's the participants. But in saying that, the district, I think, can lay out some guidelines to maybe curtail some of that, because gets to the point where it's just continual to nickel and dime. As a former athletic director, I've answered those questions for 25 years. So I know where those pain points are. So just an update on that piece, because we've talked about it many times.
I really do think, and I know that I've talked to Mr. Harrison about it. I do think the more transparent we can be and clear with families and stakeholders, what pay to participate pays for, what fundraising pays for, and then other things that may be requested be paid for and how they're paid for, will help people understand much, much more clearly. So I do appreciate that we're moving forward and trying to share that information.
Yeah, and
more
we're also
clearly.
giving the principals and the staff some tools to do even the evaluations of like field trips and things like that, which are co-curricular types of activities, but giving them the opportunity to start to make sure that they're using a planning tool to accurately sort of predict what some of those expenses are versus just sometimes picking numbers. So it's a pretty big front that we're going through this budgeting season in terms of trying to really make sure that what we are charging parents from the district side is what we would need to charge, and not the nickel and diming approach.
And we've
It's a lot of
had,
work.
yeah, and we've had that conversation a number of times, and it's good to revisit that conversation, because new parents come in and then people are, not clear on how those fees get generated. And, just as a quick summary, the pay to participate fees are paid for travel and coaching. But, there also needs to be some balancing out. So you can't have a sport that has both boys and girls and have different fees, even though one coach may be making more than another because they may have been in the position a lot longer. So there's a number of inputs that go into the fee structure. And so it's not as simple as just take the total coach's salary, total travel, divided by the number of participants, because you could have some imbalances that people would scratch their head at. So anyway, it's always good to have more conversation on that topic, because parents, some may need to be refreshed and some may have not known, because maybe they have students now in middle school or high school that they're getting, they're visiting pay to participate fees and scratching And so I'll look forward to more conversation on that. Okay, permanent improvement facilities, myself and Ellen. I know we have something big on the agenda this evening, which is for those who've been paying attention, the district hired an architect who then we went through a very lengthy process of involving various stakeholders to do a campus master plan. That is a visionary plan. It doesn't have dollars behind it, but one of the aspects of that plan was to put another access drive into our campus from the old Hilton School that would snake up alongside the district's property and back in towards the high school. And so there is an item on the agenda later, which will be to move forward with that. And we can talk more when we get there about those details. But we have the funding in place and we have the design in place, and so it's time to move forward with that. So more to come on that. Anything else? There's nothing else really, right? Okay. Okay, so we are going to move on to item 4, superintendent's announcements. I'll turn that over to Jeff.
Just a couple quick ones. Just a reminder, our next coffee chat is Thursday, February 20th. Typically, it's the Thursday after the board meeting, but this month's board meeting we moved up for, I can't remember what reason, but somebody's on vacation next week. It's still, the coffee chat is still next week. And this one, we are at Panera in Brecksville at 9 a.m. We've had a great turnout. We've had anywhere between 12 to 15 at each one of them. The only one that was kind of iffy was the day it snowed really, really bad. And we still had 6 to 7 there at that one. So it's been a great dialogue with the community members. Reminder that March 1st, kindergarten registration opens. So I know we have lots of families that are anxiously waiting for that to open, but that window will open on March 1st. Also, CVCC announced yesterday when I was at our superintendent's meeting that next fall, we usually have our all boards dinner in October. Next year, they're going to move it to April. It's going to be April of 26, and will be the all boards dinner. And the reason they're doing that is that will be the same time they'll have the grand opening for their new labs that they're building that are currently under construction. So they want to have us for the all boards dinner that we typically have every year to highlight the good things going on at CVCC, and then at the same time have the ribbon cutting for the new labs. So that's coming along very nicely. We were there yesterday. Lots going on with career technical education in the state of Ohio. And I tell Dr. Martin all the time, just follow the money. You see where the money's being invested in the state, and it's following the same path in education as well with career technical education. So in months coming, we will be revisiting through our strategic plan our career exploration program that we're going to kind of unroll and begin phasing into our district grades 6 through 12. So we have exciting stuff coming up there that we'll talk about in the coming months. Campus master plan update later in the agenda. We do have the recommendation for approval for going from conceptual drawings to architectural and design drawings, which really gets into a lot of the details. So I'll talk more about that when we get there. Last but not least, as somebody had mentioned earlier, that the governor has obviously dropped his executive or first go round at the budget. And in there currently, the governor has, phasing in full implementation of the Fair School Funding Plan, but leaving the base costs where they're at. The feedback we're getting from our friends in the State House, when I say we, I mean our lobbying groups, our different organizations from OSBA and BASA and different organizations, is that the Republican senators and representatives want to hear from their communities. They do not want to hear canned emails, though. They don't want to read the same email that everybody just copy and pastes. So they said for them to push back on their party in different areas about funding of public education, they need to hear from their communities. So they're asking to hear from the communities. So I would encourage all of us as board members and superintendent treasurers to make an effort to get a hold of our representatives and make sure they know what great public education is happening in Brecksville Broadview Heights. And if you don't mind, I'll take a quick second and I'll read to you the letter that I've drafted that I'll be sending to all 4 of our representatives. So I'll do it kind of quickly. So dear Senator Serino, as superintendent of Brecksville Broadview Heights City School District, I'm reaching out on behalf of our students, staff, and community to urge you to support the full phase-in of the Fair School Funding Plan. Our district has built a legacy of academic excellence, student success, and strong community engagement. However, without equitable and sufficient funding, our ability to provide the high-quality education our students deserve is at risk. BBHCSD exists to rigorously educate our students to the highest standards, to boldly empower our school family with exciting learning opportunities, and to collaboratively engage our community in cultivating productive future citizens of a global society. We aim to be a destination district, pushing the boundaries of academic excellence and expanding innovative opportunities for our students. Our students consistently exceed state averages. We have been awarded the prestigious National Blue Ribbon Award 4 times, a testament to the strength of our academic programs, dedicated educators, and most importantly, the support of our community. We do not fear school choice. We are ready to compete. However, we are at a fundamental disadvantage when funding is diverted to private schools that do not operate under the same regulations, accountability measures, and transparency that public districts like ours are required to uphold. This places an unfair burden on public schools while creating an uneven playing field. If public schools are not fully funded, the financial strain shifts directly to our local taxpayers, the very stakeholders you are elected to represent. I invite you to visit Brecksville Broadview Heights City School District to see firsthand what high-quality public education looks like. Our students are future-ready, self-reliant, globally responsible, and I would welcome the opportunity to show you the outstanding work happening in our schools. I urge you to make public school funding a top priority and advocate for the continued phase-in of the Fair School Funding Plan. Public education is a backbone of our communities and the key to Ohio's economic and civic future. Please stand with BBHCSD and other public schools across the state to ensure that we have resources necessary to support student success. Thank you for your time and your commitment to the future of Ohio's students. I look forward to your leadership and support on this critical issue and hope to welcome you to our district sometime soon. So I'll be sending that to our 4 representatives that represent both Brecksville and Broadview Heights. And I would urge you as well, if you get the opportunity to, and I can pass along the contact information, to also reach out to them, to let them know the great things that are happening in our school district. It's not an attack on our representatives. It's a plea to continue to support public education and the implementation of the Fair School Funding Plan, which the governor has put into the budget, but we all know that's just the first drop. It's going to go through many different iterations. And there's other pieces and parts that get more technical, but obviously I don't have pages and pages that I want to bore them with. They know those details.
So Jeff, thank you for doing that. That's a really nice letter. I also reached out to Senator Serino several times. I wasn't quite as elaborate as you were, but I thought I put together a nice bit of communication for him. I probably emailed him 4 times and called about 5, and since January 14th, and I've heard nothing from Senator Serino, but I did hear, I also reached out to Representative Robinson. I heard back from his office and they were very supportive. And I heard back from, I actually spoke to Senator Patton
Okay, good.
for a while.
Great.
He was very supportive. Who are the 4 people that you're talking about?
So it's Serino, and then Patton, and then Robinson, and I'm going to say his name
Mike
correctly.
Don Villa.
Don Villa. It's his second go around. He represents portions of Broadview Heights and Strongsville mainly.
Oh.
Michael, and he was a representative before. Now he's back for another term. He had a break in between.
So he covers part of.
Yes, he's new. We've never had him before.
Okay, all right.
Yes,
Thank
with the
you.
redistricting. So I'll send those contacts to you guys, the names and the district numbers, so that you have them. Robinson is hosting a meeting coming up in March, actually during spring break. So he's hosting a meeting similar to the one that we did last month, where the local superintendents through the Alliance for High Quality Education hosts, where it's just a kind of question and answer relationship building. We get to kind of vent a little bit as to what is concerning to us in public education. That's good.
And when you say he's hosting a meeting, it's him and then he invites people from public education, or it's him and other legislators?
It's him, his aides, then representatives from the Alliance of how do I say it? The name of that group, High Quality Education.
Yeah.
Alliance of High Quality Education, which is a lobbying group. And then it was superintendents that are in his district,
Right.
which includes Solon. It's kind of this east side,
Yeah.
kind of running down through Brecksville. We're the most south in his district.
And as we continue talking about the budget, and it's going to get stickier rather than easier to navigate. I'd still like to propose that we continue to consider joining the Vouchers for Ohio initiative, which is, as I know, we have not been affected tremendously by all of the, well, the $1 billion that was taken from our particular item, a line item in the budget from last year. But I think it's going to be important for all public school districts to show unity and supporting, I think, one of the pillars of democracy in our society. So I would just like to put it out there. I know we've got a very big agenda today, so I would like to discuss it further.
Okay, we're moving on to item 5, Treasurer's Communications. Craig?
So before I do the report, I'll just piggyback on a good resource that we got as treasurers. So this was provided through OASBO. So if you did not get a chance to take a look at this, this is a FAQ. So this is really from a lot of the financial side of things. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it does talk about there's this concern over cash balances, and this is all about factual data. So it's setting the record correct based on some articles that are, for and against, how the budget process works. So there's a very few number of schools that have extremely large cash balances. And the problem is that even the ones that do, because of COVID funding leaving, and I present for fiscal oversight, because I've been through it twice, I guess, but that conversation it's fascinating when you look at the data. Prior to COVID, there were, plenty of schools that were under, whether it was watch, caution, emergency. Then during COVID, that number shrunk dramatically, and those numbers are drastically starting to increase. So cash balance, it's a relative piece of this. So there's some key points here for you. School spending, are school districts mismanaging their expenses? This is what the data shows. We've got some actual charts of average annual salary increases based off of administrators, teachers, counselors, librarians. These are all within alignment in terms of it's below inflationary levels, right? So those are your averages. You've got annual expenditure changes that you can see. It's a lot of good information that is available that you can also include maybe if you are choosing to reach out to representatives. And to Jeff's point, which is the same thing that we're harping on, is how do you fund the formula? We're really happy that the governor is putting that into his budget bill, but how do you do that on fiscal 22 levels? It's just really doesn't seem fair. And when we talk about, one of the things we were discussing as a professional group was, how do you create property tax relief? You fund the formula. So we are fortunate that we are just on the formula by the skin of our teeth for the first time in many, many years. If we would fall off of the formula, the other part of the legislation the governor's proposed is that where we were for many years on the guarantee is that there would be a reduction of the guarantee. So that could specifically, if we would get pushed off of the formula, specifically hurt our district, because the governor's plan says that they will reduce the amount of funding for guarantees by 5% over the next biennium. So funding the formula at fiscal 24 levels at a minimum will actually help with property taxes because it reduces the local capacity. And what the data shows, in addition, because part of this talks about the OEPI study as well with property taxes, is that the state share of funding has decreased. And if they fund at the fiscal 22 levels, our state share of funding for public education will decrease from 40% to like 34%. So the state is continually paying less for public education. And what happens is that is a tax increase on local, taxpayers. That's where it's being shifted. And I don't know if everyone understands that. So because of the way the formula is created, by having the state pay less, the local taxpayers are going to be required to pay more. So it's a tax increase. And so let's be very clear about that. And that stuff is outlined in here as well through charts and graphs. And you can see, the process. So this is a really great tool. This talks about the tax burden here. Is the fair school funding unsustainable? Again, take a look at it. We won't go through it all today, but this can really help you generate some of those key points as you talk to legislators. And we, again, encourage the community to do the same thing because, as Jeff said, we're not afraid to compete, but we want the playing field to be the same, right? So if we've got to respond and act in a certain way and We just believe that that's where the public dollars go, and then it should be to the same.
And I just want to reiterate what Craig says is the lack of funding or if they choose not to fully implement the full fair school funding plan, or they don't increase the base cost from the 22 inputs, meaning 2022 inputs, it only shifts it to our local community.
Mhm.
So there's no other way to say it. If the state isn't going to fund it, then it's coming in a form of a levy, unfortunately. And that's not a threat. I don't mean to make that a threat. It's just the reality of how schools are funded in Ohio. And there's a lot of debate that surrounds that. But that's the fact of the matter.
Craig, I have two quick questions. What do you mean that our district is on the funding formula by the skin of our teeth?
We just went on to the formula based off of how it's calculated. So what they do is they place our factors into the formula. And if the formula generates more than what we would have gotten previously, we stay on the formula. If they go through that calculation, it will push us off the formula. If they, for instance, if they keep it at fiscal 22 base cost, it could very likely push us off of the formula.
What,
So
Doesn't
it would
require-
push-
It's a guarantee.
it's going to put us into the guarantee, which now they're thinking about reducing funding for the guarantee. So normally you fell back on the guarantee, which means you at least got the money you got previously. You wouldn't get less than that. So now you would get less than that times 5%, I guess, essentially.
so we really want to encourage the legislature to
Fund the
Fund
formula.
it at 24.
It's fund the formula. It's really the answer. It helps with property taxes, and it can't work unless it's fully funded.
But they'll also say that they're going to implement or phase in fully funded, but they're not changing the base. Because in the first drop of the budget, they left it at 22. 2022's base costs with no increase for inflation and everything else that's happened in the previous 3 years. So yes, they're continuing to fund it, but the base costs aren't changing. You also will hear some legislators, representatives say that, well, we're spending more on public education. Well, the dollar amount is more, but the buying power for those dollars is less.
Right.
And actually, they've spent less on public education for the past 20 years. But the dollar amount is bigger, but inflationary changes in that and the value of the dollar, no, they're not. They're not funding us more. It's more on a number, but not on the buying power.
Yeah. And interestingly, when they went from, we fought very hard to get the base cost increased in the last biennium to fiscal 22. When that happened, you can actually, they have a chart. It's not in this document, but I can send it to you. It shows how many schools were on the formula. And then when they raised and changed the base inputs, the number of schools on the formula drastically rose. So more and more schools, when you keep the base cost moving, and they can do that annually, they've just not chosen to do that. If they would keep the base cost constantly in the formula year after year, even if not doing every 2 years, but when they do put that base cost increase in there, it pushes more schools onto the formula.
what's your response when you hear like some of these legislators say that the fair school funding plan is not sustainable?
I've only heard one legislator say that. I haven't heard many say that. And I also know members of that party that don't necessarily agree with that statement. So I would
Yeah,
also say
agree.
that $1 billion a year on vouchers is not sustainable either. As might be my quick response to that. So, and what would it have cost to fully fund fair school funding in the last biennium? It was like $770 million, just shy of $1 billion, which is what we then chose as a state to put out through vouchers. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of key factors. So I will go on and let's talk about BBHCSD specific finances for the month of January, like we normally do. But again, that FAQ is out there under my monthly report for you to take a look
And
at.
can it, just like for
Sure.
our community's reference, like we get, is it 17% of our funding comes from the state? Is that right? Is that about?
That's all of it. So that's including your like homestead and rollback as well. So that's not even just like the state aid necessarily. So yes.
It's like, so people have some reference, like everything else is basically paid for by our local taxpayers. So if that
Yes.
gets reduced even more, then,
Correct.
if this is.
What's that dollar amount roughly? Is it like 2,000?
$2,700. So every school is different. So we have a district profile report that it's all publicly available on the ODU website. And when legislators make comments that it's cheaper for the state to pay $7,000 for a voucher, well, the state only gives Drexel Broadview Heights $2,700. So that's not true for our students, right? So it's not always as easy as it seems when you look at how the funding formula. Are there schools that get more than that? Yes, absolutely, because it all is based off of the formula. So we have higher local capacity, which is a combination of different items like median income and property values and everything else. So yeah.
Yeah, I just like the fact sheet you gave was great, but like some of the numbers, if they're for all Ohio districts, it looks like the state is providing more funding. But like, so people know in Brecksville, Broadview Heights, we are providing a lot more funding. So
Yes, absolutely.
it's important to advocate so the state still keeps up, like helping us, because otherwise, like you said, the burden goes to our local taxpayers and they're already doing enough.
A student
Correct.
sitting in our classroom, we're getting $2,700 roughly, $2,700 from the state to help educate them. If that student left our district and took a Ed Choice voucher and went to another school, if it's a high school student, they're getting close to $8,000. So,
And it costs really to educate a student in this district, which is an excellent district. It costs around $14,000 plus $1,000 per student to educate, of which the state pays $2,700.
And which,
Yeah.
and to that point,
Everybody
though,
else.
to that point, and that's been a piece of contention, which says, oh, it's so expensive to educate those students. But public schools, let's keep in mind, have a lot of requirements when it comes to
Yes.
special education,
Yes.
gifted, bilingual, transportation is a beast. So those are why some of those costs are as high as they are, that the private schools don't have to pay for them.
Yeah, we went over some of them in our policy, first read earlier today.
Okay,
The private schools get the voucher money,
correct.
they get, yes.
so it makes a big difference.
So I've added a new column this month, if you took a peek. It's just the percent of the forecast, and I'll collapse these and move these. So it's not as particular on the revenue side, but this does show the amount of money we brought in. I think I told you last month that this was really all we received in our tax advance locally, which was $834,000 that was in the general fund as a tax advance. So it was very low. So our total income for the month of January is $1.4 million. But what always is nice more for me to look at is on the expense side of things is where are we right now in relation to our forecast? So I've added this percentage type of metric that we can at least also look at. The total expenses were $6.1 million for the month. So we did have $4.45 million that was spent in salaries and benefits. Do keep in mind, I will talk about that later, but it was a 3-pay month, which is why it's so much more elevated. And we did have the severance payment, which was about $550,000 as a part of that. So that was planned for. So when you look at, if we took like 100%, divided it by 12, each month of expenses should be about 8.33%. So when we look at January, that's 8 months into our fiscal year, or 7 months, sorry. We should be at about 58% of our forecast at this time. We're at 60, but that's okay because we had a 3-pay month and we had a huge severance payment. So it's very close. So the areas that I've highlighted is if it's over, those amounts that are maybe not alarming, but it's this 100%, but that's because it's a transfer. So it just shows us where we're in comparison as of today at the end of January to our forecast. So most of the things are in alignment with where our forecast says we should be. It's just another metric to look at, but again, $6.1 million in expenditures for the month. When we look at our end of the year of how we would project these just as projections for the rest of the few months we have left of the fiscal year, would be a negative $380,000 at this point. So we would be deficit spending. However, in comparison to where we are at the forecast as of today, it looks like it is to our benefit right now. So when we go down to page 2, when we look at more detail about the revenues from last year to this year, this is where you can see that large decrease of what we were advanced on our tax revenues. So the majority of this is the real estate tax revenues went down over $1 million in comparison to last year because that was a very big difference because of the late tax bills that went out in Cuyahoga County. So the second piece was all of the revenues basically remained very consistent with the prior year. So when we look at last January to this January, it's just a timing issue. When we look at the expenditure side of things, we see that the expenditures are much higher. And again, those are outlined by the 3-pay month, as well as the large severance payment. Likewise, benefits were also significantly higher. That third pay, we're paying, the 14% of that extra payroll. So benefits are also higher for the month of January because of the 3-pay month. Okay. In fiscal 27, just to remind everyone that is contractually moving to 24 pays per year. So then we won't see these 3 pays like this any longer. Overall, that shows you the same thing as the first page did. And then we look at revenues. So green is last year's revenue to date. Blue is this year's revenue to date. So that's July to January 31st. Very, very consistent with the prior year. And then we look at the expenditures. Obviously, the expenditures are still higher. And again, those were the reasons, because we've got that extra pay, we got the severance payments, we have the bonuses that were in there, the severance retirement incentives from October. So this will start to catch up a little bit towards the end of the year, would be my prediction. And then lastly, which we're not going to go through this, but if you saw this, I was able to use a little AI to our advantage. So I actually dumped this report, these 2 pages. I dumped this into a program called Gamma, and this is what came out. So it's kind of cool. We've kind of shared with the board, for the public watching, I guess, we've shared with the board some of the AI stuff that we get to do as treasurers and Jeff gets to do as superintendents. But this is maybe an easier way to look at some stuff. So I want to just show an example of it. You do have to look everything pretty closely, because weirdly enough, like one of these pictures, I think was this one, I had to change the picture because it had future on it, but it spelled future wrong, which is strange because it like creates images. So you do have to, obviously with AI, you've got to look at everything. But it's a more visual way to look at things. So I don't know if you like it, give feedback, but it was kind of cool to just take the report, dump it in, and then it creates a different type of document that maybe resonates with more people, or it's easier to understand. But I threw that in together for you this month to take a look at it. Any questions or comments for me? Nope. And then lastly, the cash position and the annual spending plan are here for just review. We don't talk about them, but they're available for the public if they'd like to take a look at those. That's it.
All right, very good. Thanks, Greg. Moving on to item 6, community communications. Item A, hearing of the public. I assume we have some.
We have one, yes.
Okay, so let me read this. Hearing of the public. Persons wishing to address the Board of Education may do so at this point. No formal action will be taken on subjects that are not included on this agenda until the board has had an opportunity to study them. Comments regarding personnel must be submitted in writing through the office of the superintendent in order for the board to complete the planned agenda in an effective and efficient manner and to provide sufficient opportunities for members of the public to be heard. Hearing of the public shall be limited to a maximum of 60 minutes, during which each speaker shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. So when you come up, I will set a timer for 3 minutes and just do your best to finish within it. And if it goes off, if you could wrap up, that would be appreciated.
Okay, first up and only so far is Hillary Jackson. Please state your name and your address, and you're ready to go at the podium, please.
Yes.
Yep.
Sorry.
Well, this is more obligatory than anything. But my name is Hillary Jackson. I live, oh, it doesn't move, so here, I'm on my tippy toes. I live at 6955 Arlington Street. I just wanted to say that I appreciated the email addressing the ICE concerns, and I'm glad to know that the safety of all students is a priority. I'm also interested in receiving an email as well to address the recent executive orders regarding intimate spaces being designated by sex, not identity, any radical indoctrination, such as gender ideology, discriminatory equity ideology, and how the school plans to make any changes if they needed to, or adjustments to comply with those orders. I also have recently accepted the nomination as the Cuyahoga County Chair for Moms for Liberty. And on behalf of the chapter, we look forward to working with the board. 10 seconds.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Okay, we're going to move on to item 7, consent agenda. Item A, resolve to approve certified personnel recommendations. Item B, resolve to approve classified personnel recommendations. Item C, resolve to approve supplemental personnel recommendations. Item D, resolve to approve the Lorain County Community College CCP MOU for the 2025-2026 school year as attached. Item E, resolve to approve the University of Akron CCP MOU for the 2025-2026 school year as attached. Item F, resolve to approve the Kent State University CCP MOU for the 2025-2026 school year as attached. Item G, resolve to approve the 2025-2026 Ohio High School Athletic Association membership resolution as attached. Item H, resolve to approve the 2024 to 2025 wraparound expert service agreement as attached. Item I, resolve to approve the check register and bank reconciliation for the month of January 2025 as attached. Item J, resolve to accept donations as presented. Item K, resolve to approve the minutes from the January 15th, 2025 regular board meeting as attached. Item L, resolve to approve superintendent's consent items A through K. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so if we go to the certified staffing agenda, obviously our consent agenda, these are regular business type items. But on the certified, I want to point out we have 2 retirements on here. And we have 67 years of service to Brecksville Broadview Heights, both with Bob Schenk and Tanya Pagel. We wish them the best in retirement. Bob will continue to coach cross country and track for us in retirement. But, you know, going into this school year, we did not foresee having many retirements because of the retirement incentive that we offered last year. So we had 14 retirements last year, roughly. This year, we're up to 9. And a lot of that, or some of those, have to do with the state changing the retirement requirement, changing it from 35 to 33 years. So that has prompted some. So this spring, we thought it would be a light hiring season. We'll be back on the road. So hopefully we will continue to find the quality candidates that we were able to find this year to join our team. So that's the certified side. Classified side, a couple of food service worker, substitute, kind of a promotion in the beekeepers world on here. We do have a kind of a retirement resignation, Cheryl Schrank at the middle school, who does a phenomenal job in the office for us. We wish her much success as she steps away from employment as well. On the supplemental side, filling out some spring coaching positions. I always do like to point out a couple volunteers that are on there. We appreciate their volunteer service to our students. As you're perusing those lists, I'll just mention, you know, we have 3 CCP MOUs on here, yearly kind of renewal of those agreements with Lorain County Community College, University of Akron, and Kent State University. And yes, they have an additional deadline to sign up. April 1st is the original one, and then there'll be one in November too, in case a family chooses to do it at that time for spring semester next year. And just as a complete side note, but promoting CCP a little bit, I had a conversation with my son, who's a junior at the University of Cincinnati currently, who he took some CCP in high school, and he's actually graduating a semester early, found out today. So he'll be graduating next December. So it cut off a semester for him, and he didn't take as many as he could, but he took a couple, and it helped end the semester early.
Just real quick too, for those who may not know, CCP is College Credit Plus, and MOU is Memorandum of Understanding.
Yep, used to be the old post-secondary when some of us were in school, you know, but now it's College Credit Plus,
Okay.
where we cover the costs of those courses and books. The OHSA membership is a yearly renewal of our membership with the association. Wraparound Expert Services Agreement. This is not for BBH. This is for St. Michael for Title I funding that runs through our district with fiscal agent for that. And I'm excited to hear about the check register and bank reconciliation.
The check register and bank reconciliations are here. We don't get to read them tonight, sorry. Donations, we just have one for the drama club. And minutes. It was a light month for me.
Any comments or questions on the consent agenda? No, roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item 8, superintendent's recommendations. Item A is informational.
It's the first read of the policies.
Okay, yep. So we We kind of walked through these, Ellen and Lisa walked through all the changes. These are all the policies. This is a first read. And then next month will be the second read and the
Gives
approval.
opportunity. There's a couple of things we do 2 reads for. School calendars are one. If you remember, we do a first read, second read. Gives opportunity for community to speak into any policies that they may have opinions on, as well as Board of Education members. But those are the first read documents when we talk about being posted on the website. That's the location that we talked about where they're at. If anybody has any difficulty finding them or navigating to them, please give me a call and I'll be happy to email them or help you find them. But there are quite a few. I think there's 26 in total. There's a couple policy updates that Neola suggested for us that are not current policies of ours. So we are not adding it. So it isn't quite 26 policies. It might be more like 23, somewhere in that ballpark. There'll be 12 administrative guidelines. Remember, policy is the policy that the district operates under. Administrative guidelines are kind of how we carry out the policy. So once we approve the policies at the next meeting, then you'll see the administrative guidelines come to you. Administrative guidelines only require 1 read. So that'll be coming at a later time. We're working through that behind the scenes at the moment too. Obviously, there is a lot, or almost the vast majority of these policy updates are based on legislation that has changed or been updated that requires policy to be changed. There are times that legislation comes about that requires the district to have a policy. You remember 2 meetings ago, we had a policy that legislation required that we created a policy by, it was by January 29th or something. And then there are other legislative matters that don't require a policy, but it's law and we have to follow it. And one of those that I'll point out on here is it would be policy 7421, which is restrooms, locker rooms, shower rooms, and changing rooms. This is because it's a result of SB 104. The law or the legislation does not require the district to have a policy. But if we had a policy or didn't have a policy, we still have to follow the law. So Neola suggests to adopt the policy. The policy is the legislation and is the law. But it is one of those ones where we don't have to have the policy, but we chose to put it there because we're asked about it often. So then we can point to that as our policy. And it is following the legislation. People have asked me, I mean, in my social circles, in my family, in our community, by people I work with every day, what do you think of all this legislation is changing? Does it change what we do on a daily basis? Not really. Not really. Much of what's in here and things that go back and forth, we will follow the law. We have to follow, there's certain requirements by the state that we have to follow. So sometimes things are changing to a degree, but just like before, when it read differently, we followed it that way as well. So we do our best. In the end, what we're going to do every single time, I don't care what's in policy, I don't care what necessarily is in laws, we're going to take care of our students and meet their needs and where they're at. And every student is unique and every student is different and every student finds himself in a different situation. And too many times we can overgeneralize about our students and believe that they all experience the same home life or societal concerns or issues that our own family does. Well, that's not always true. We have students who have major hurdles just to get to school every day, even in communities like Rexville and Broadview Heights. We will continue to welcome them with open arms and take the best care that we can while following our policy and following law. And that's what a lot of this is about. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the policy. There is one in particular that after speaking to a board member or two, that I will be making an adjustment to. And I'm quickly just trying to look at it here. It is actually the policy 2430.02. It's the participation of community/STEM school students in extracurricular activities. The reason why that I'm going to adjust it from our first kind of shot at it is we had an option to select. And it says the superintendent may, like when I became a superintendent, I didn't realize the importance of the word may and shall in just about everything I deal with, from contractual language, everything else. So it says the superintendent may grant a homeschooled student or a student of a community school, STEM school, or a different public school to come to our district to participate in athletics if they were subjected to discrimination, harassment, and a list of items. We don't have open enrollment in our district. So having that in there, I would tell you as your superintendent sitting here today, I would have no interest in allowing a student, and I'm just going to throw this out as an example, allowing a student from North Royalton who had a bad experience with a staff member there to come to our district to play interscholastic athletics. it becomes a very difficult situation because it's superintendent may. So how am I going to decide who does and doesn't? Is it because they're the starting quarterback or they're a kid that's not going to play at all? Is it what is the reason they're transferring? And then we don't have open enrollment to begin with. So when we have kids who attend our schools who don't live here, we do have some, they pay the tuition. They pay $14,000 a year to attend our schools. So that isn't necessarily fair. Our district has had some history in this realm. So at first glance, I selected that option, but I had a board member very gently and politely say to me, well, Jeff, I know I want you to be here for the rest of your career and everything else, but if there was ever a change in superintendent, do we have the same confidence that that superintendent may deal with it the same way that I would deal with it? So I'm suggesting between now is taking out that option. It's the green paragraph that's on policy 2430.02. And this really comes down to it. It has to do with the student coming from another public school to our district. Kids who are homeschooled who live in our district can participate in extracurricular activities. They have been able to, they will continue to be able to. It's in legislation and it says shall, okay? Students who are in a non-public school, so they go to a non-public school that doesn't offer gymnastics, for example, but they're a Brecksville, Broadview Heights resident. There's legislation that says we shall let them participate. And then there's legislation for STEM and community schools that if they live in Brecksville, Broadview Heights and attend a school who doesn't have that sport or group, they could participate, they shall participate. The one that has the may is this, situation where a student may have experienced difficulty in another public school. We may allow them to. At this point in time, my recommendation, Board of Education, with this policy is to remove that piece, that we would not have it in policy. So which means since it's not in policy, I can't just decide to do it. We've left it out of policy. So that's the only adjustment I've made to it since the first read. And I appreciate your guys' feedback as Board of Education prior to tonight and in between meetings on any other adjustments you may like to see or want to be considered. And with that, I'll shut up and I'll take any questions you may have about the 20-some policy updates in first read.
From what you just said, that's in both the policies?
Yes, it's actually two policies, if that's what you're pointing out. Yes, it would be both the 2430.02 and the following one, 2431 for interscholastic
So you're gonna delete it from both?
from both.
Yeah.
Yep, it's repeated in each one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions?
There's a little typo on the description. Instead of 2430, it refers to it as 2340, just so you know.
Where's that at?
Just on the link on the Board Docs page.
Oh, and the title of the
Yeah.
document? Okay. We'll get that switched up.
Okay, if nothing else, we're going to move on to item B. Resolve to approve the high school varsity wrestling trip proposal as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
So this is retroactive. It happened this past weekend. Qualified. This happens from time to time, that we'll approve a trip after it's already happened, but it puts it on the books and shows it was approved. I do have the ability to approve it in between board meetings, so that's what this one is here for. Sometimes coaches are very superstitious and they don't want to put it on before they actually qualify. So that's why this is on for this.
That why there's no cost listed?
Correct. There's no cost to the students for this trip. It's a tournament that the district covers or the athletic department covers.
Part of their season if they qualify.
Okay.
And our policy allows you to do that, where we can approve it retroactively.
Very similar to hires. Sometimes we have a hire position in between board meetings, then we can retroactive it.
They stayed overnight though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but everyone just took care of their own, right?
The district pays for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All
The
right.
athletic department.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelick,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yeah,
Mr. Dosen,
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item D, resolve to approve the international exchange student for the 2025-2026 school year. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
If board members, you'll remember last year we were approached about taking a foreign exchange student. We typically do each year. And of late, probably the recent past, we've taken 1 a year. Board policy does speak to that we could take up to 5, but we've chosen to do 1.5 for the past couple of years. Years ago, prior to my arrival, and I think even when Mr. Jake was assistant principal before, had some difficulties with some foreign exchange programs and the students who attended. So we've kind of limited it to 1. This is a company we have not worked with in the past, but had connected with the family, and they were very passionate about hosting a foreign exchange student. Came to us very late last year. I think it was a week before school started or the first week of school. And it just wasn't, the timing isn't right. When you try to rush that, it isn't good for anyone. So they said, okay, when can we put in for it? We talked about that, and here it is. So this same family is going to host a foreign exchange student, will be with us next year. It's a young lady coming to us. I'm trying to look really quickly. I'm trying to remember where she's
From
coming.
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan. So it's both good for the student who obviously is in the exchange program, but it's good for our students as well.
Any comments or questions?
I'm glad the family was able to have a student come stay with them. I know that they really wanted to do this last year and it just didn't work out with, like you said, the timing. So it made me happy to see that they were able to follow through and have a student come to stay with them. So I know they were, like you said, they were really passionate.
Yeah, so I think
about
it's the
it.
first time they hosted a student.
Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item 9, treasurer's recommendations. Item A, resolve to approve the architectural design professional contract amendment for the BBH campus master planning project as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, so this is the design addendum. This is the cost to basically get this ready for bid is the next step. So they will do all of the drawings. They will work with the city for the variance that will be necessary, or variances, I guess, possible up to 38,000 in reimbursables. This would piggyback onto the current contract that we have with AVG. And I think we're looking at potential bid authorization either in March or April, whenever they can hopefully get all the drawings and all the stuff that they need done. So,
Would you mind opening up, going to the last page?
sure.
So just to keep it in the forefront, obviously we as a school district want to be good neighbors, and we continue to collaborate with Chippewa Hills HOA, which is over the hill there by Hilton, as well as some of the homeowners right on Mill Street around this entrance. We continue to meet with, I've spent probably an hour and a half with one couple in their home, looking out windows to see where their concerns were and what we could do to maybe alleviate some of those concerns. So what I want to point out here is, if you see, it's going to be in the bottom right-hand corner of this photo. You'll see a dark kind of a blotchiness down there. That is kind of a mounding and some evergreens that we would put there, because one of the houses that is closest to the property line was concerned about headlights and just, you know, they have a very peaceful, quiet, dark backyard at night because there's nothing behind them currently. But the roadway or driveway is above their home, so the headlights kind of would go over their house, but we wanted to kind of appease them and be good neighbors, so we added that piece to it. So that driveway does hug that side of the property line. And actually, for the driveway portion of the campus master plan, currently as designed conceptually, because these are not design drawings, we don't need any variances for the driveway. It's 50 foot off the property line, which is what zoning requires. The variances we would need at this end of the property for the project in whole is signage at the road. We need a variance to have different signage. We would need a variance for some parking spot dimensions in a parking lot that possibly could be by any of the athletic fields down that way. And then really thinking into the future, if there's a baseball and softball field on top of where Hilton is right now and has a press box, we can't have anything, according to zoning, anything over 30 feet high. That would be another possible variance. I've continued to communicate with the city and making sure they are abreast of all of our ideas and dreams and plans. Many members of our city council and mayor were involved in the process and the brainstorming of this. So it should not be a surprise to any of our city officials in Brecksville in particular, because this portion of the campus is in Brecksville. Chippewa Hills HOA, we've had a very good relationship. They wanted to know about water runoff. They wanted to know about headlights. They even want to know about, are those speed bumps or speed tables on that road? They are speed tables. because they were concerned that there's speed bumps, those become noisy because people drive quicker over speed bumps than over speed tables. They also wanted to talk about what type of lighting we're going to put on the driveway and to make sure it doesn't encroach upon their property. So we had told them that we will continue to collaborate with them and keep them in the loop. I had emails to many of those homeowners today, even just updating them on where we're at, because this approval of this now will get us into the design of it. So we'll have more of the specific details that some of the members of that HOA are looking for, like what sewer lines are going to be used for runoff off the road and things of that nature, because they do have some concerns about erosion. But because of regulations, we're not allowed to divert more water their way. It's simply not allowed. So it'll be designed in a way where it won't. Actually, by taking Hilton down will help with the water runoff from our property to theirs, because we don't have as much hard surface anymore as when the building was there. So I say all of that just to let you know that I continue to make a strong effort to communicate with our neighbors to make sure that we're being good neighbors during this time.
Yeah.
So yes.
Is there a side, looks like there might be a sidewalk along the road, or is that?
There would be, possibly. Again, this is somewhat conceptual at that, but there, we will start out by having sidewalk on there. If you can scroll down to the feature of this driveway, keep going behind the board office.
Oh, up here.
Yeah. So if you follow, obviously following, it comes up the hill, and you'll notice that in the design conceptual, there is a roundabout there on campus, because that'll help keep traffic moving. One of the reasons we're putting this driveway in is to add a third entrance on the campus for multiple safety features, but also to get traffic off of Mill Road. But we just didn't want to take the backup on Mill Road and then put it on campus.
Right.
So if that was a three-way stop, it's another pinch point where we're going to back up in the morning, where the roundabout is going to keep traffic moving and get them on and into our parking lots quicker. And we can even go as far as saying it's an educational tool to teach kids how to navigate a roundabout. So that's what will go out for bid, if approved.
Jeff, does the design include the removal of the old asphalt from Hilton, or are we leaving those drives and parking lots in place?
Well, we do use some of it at the entrance, but I'm sure you're referring to the parking lots
Right.
right there. I'm gonna have to touch base with Brian Koss. Do
Yeah,
you
'cause I don't-
remember the top of your head?
I
Because
think it
once they
might
get the
with the
floors
building.
out of Hilton, they're gonna regrade. So I think the asphalt is included, but
It might be too.
I'll get you
We
the
can
answer.
double check.
Was it wasn't included in the demo of?
It might be.
it might be
Oh,
in
it
the
might
demo.
be.
of
Okay.
Hilton. We
Oh,
remove the asphalt that's the old parking lot, and it'll turn
Like
around
all
in the
of
back.
like this and all of this.
You remember when we did the demo, we had in there the grading to be just open green space.
Right.
So if I remember correctly, I believe that's
It might
included.
be.
The
Yeah.
parts that aren't going to be used in this driveway. But I'll double check and get that.
So the other question, and this is just forward looking, that nice big open green space, a lot of teams like, hey,
Yeah.
that's a great practice area, but then there's no parking.
Correct.
Right. So, and it's okay, but I guess, we need to think about that too, because then there might be people a la like the Metro Parks, like, well, I'll just pull off
Into the grass.
I'll pull it right into the grass, and then you could end up having,
Yeah,
you know.
we'll have to plan for that, and it'll have to do a lot with when this goes out to bid and when they'll actually be able to start. Because if they're starting this project before they have the chance, well, they won't, they'll be starting it before really a chance to seed and for it to take hold and grow to actually be able to play on it. So we'll have a little bit of time there. So.
right. I
But
mean,
yes, we'll have
it's,
to take into consideration some parking.
yeah, because obviously the master plan, which has a baseball and softball field
Right.
there, we have no idea how long off into the
Right.
future that might be for that to materialize. So in the interim, we're creating a really nice open green.
Even if we make
spot.
even if we, when they grade, even if we grade a parking lot that would be, crushed asphalt, just as temporary parking. Because people are
Right.
gonna use,
Yeah,
our youth organizations, I'm sure soccer will be just
Sure.
dying to get on there,
sure.
to have extra.
I
green
mean,
space.
we may want to even consider, putting that in somewhere,
Yeah.
just so that,
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't remember offhand.
other,
Follow up on both.
okay, thanks. Other comments or questions?
I just want to say the comment, and thank Mr. Harrison for the amount of time that you're putting in and being a good neighbor and representing the board with the residents at Chippewa Hills, you know, in being so diligent and addressing their concerns. I'm sure it's not in the purview of every superintendent to, you know, spend so much time around what's planning, you know, city planning, so to speak, for that. So
And
we
they've
do,
been
we do
great.
appreciate it. I know they've been great, you know.
And I wish every special interest group or interested community member who they just went about it the right way. They caught it early. They came, wanted to communicate. They were proactive. And then so the HOA board has been very active, but then I've had a couple community members who had a little bit more special interest that we continue to communicate with. And because we stream our meetings, Brian Cost has already answered our question
Oh,
for
good.
us. Brian's answer, thank you, Mr. Cost. Parking lot is staying with the Hilton demo. It will be reviewed and designed for the drive as parking lots are currently not included in the drive. So parking lots is staying with the Hilton demo.
Okay. Just as a reminder for everyone too, you know, the campus master plan, as I mentioned earlier, the full master plan is visionary. There's no funding behind it. This is a piece of it where we do have funding and it aligns with our priorities in trying to alleviate some of the traffic concerns on Mill Road. So we are moving forward with this piece only, and we do have funding available to take this bite of the apple. So just keep that in mind.
Provided the bids come in well.
Yes.
I mean, they're
That's
always
true.
fast.
That's true. That's true.
Can I ask a
Sure.
timeline question too? So that we're gonna think about going out for bid in March or April, and then bids will come back. And then what are we, like, when is the idea like this would be done and ready for use?
We would like it done sooner than later.
I would
but-
love to have it done before school starts, if you can hear me, Mr. Cost.
But he says no.
But he doesn't believe it'll be done before the start of school. We're about a month or two behind if we wanted it done at the beginning of school. So, and again, it depends on where the bids come in, depends on how busy the contractors are to see when they can do it. So it's something that will, when we move forward, it's something that will happen and be open first semester next year in the fall.
We don't want to overpromise and
Yeah.
underdeliver.
Yeah, it can
But
be
yeah.
worked on during the school year.
Yes, because
it's-
currently there's really, the only thing this is affecting, because I want full disclosure, putting this driveway in is affecting
Cross-country.
cross-country course.
Yeah.
So,
Which they have a contingency.
and that is
plan.
not the reason Mr.
In
Shank
case.
retired, but, so we will have to make some adjustments to the cross-country course or relocate where they have the invitational.
You said they have a contingency plan already?
Yeah,
that-
I
Yeah, 'cause
believe
I know
that's
they
what I'm
run
saying.
right through. but-
Bob, one of the
Yeah.
first things Bob asked when he heard we were campus master planning was how's this gonna affect the cross-country course? He wasn't the only one. There were many people
Sure.
that asked about it.
Other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yeah.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item 10, closing items, item A. Announcements, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for March 19th at 6 PM. Item B, may I have a motion to resolve to adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, meeting is adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone.